Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back. Thanks so much for joining us again today. You got an email from me this morning just noting that we are going to have a breakout group today. The schedule has Andrew teaching Silly Film. It's one of our most treasured tools. When we started teaching people how to use technology, of course, we had to realize that just like everybody, learning technology is very frustrating. So having a really enjoyable, fun way to onboard about it is everything. And we created this Silly Film for iPads, which is it's based in the tools that already come on an iPad, so people don't have to buy new apps. They come with an iPad when you purchase one. And we use this, I evaluate people for their technology skills as well, and for communication needs and programming needs. I've been doing that for most of my career. This is a tool this is a go-to tool for me as we make film, because it's a way to align with someone in an enjoyable setting. You can get a sense of what kind of support they might need to touch the device, what their learning curve is like to actually come back to a feature that they enjoyed, those kinds of things. So it's a great evaluation tool. So just to note, there are lots of ways to use this. Like I said, you're going to be having a good time today with Andrew walking through these. And the breakout group that we're going to, as I outlined in the email this morning, we got a lot of goal setting from people specific to state, county, or agency-wide protocol and technology, needing some support about how to implement technology. Now, we do have an implementation session, but those are very specific to strategic goals, key performance indicators, annual goals, those kinds of things for an individual, so for an agency. So because we had so many people with that goal in mind, I'm going to hold a breakout group specifically with people who are trying to formulate where to even start. Because this Bring Your Own Device series is really the ground level service tool that we use, and when we're trying to integrate any kind of cultural change or integrate any kind of new tool, we need a top-down, bottom-up model where the leadership has their sights on and encouragement of and support for how things are rolling out, and then the direct service providers who are implementing the tools with individuals. So those things need to happen at the same time, and there are enough people in this top layer, the top down, that seems to be worth having a breakout group. We might meet very briefly, and everybody will want to come back to the silly film lessons, however you want to play that out today. We just felt like it was significant enough to set aside some time, and we can, in the breakout group, talk some about statewide projects and share tools and ideas that other people are using, and have kind of just an exchange of where people are and the things that they're finding working, etc. Okay. All right. So Andrew, is there anything else that you need from me before, or we're going to need, I'm sorry, we're going to need to know who would like to be in that breakout group so that we can actually manually add you to it. So if you could unmute yourself and let me know.
Yeah, and actually, Jennifer, I am able to create a breakout room that people can self-select into.
Huh.
So let me see if I can do that, and then how that will work if folks are able to join that. So I
And
just went ahead
Jennifer,
and, yeah, sorry, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry. And before we go into the breakout room, do you want to share maybe a little bit also in terms of the Apple versus Android devices relative to the Silly Film lessons?
Yeah, I mentioned it briefly earlier, and so thank you, Andrew. Deepen that conversation a little bit. Apple, what we talked about in our very first session is that Apple was made for the visual brain, and the visual brain is the basis of all universal design. What that means is when I touch something on an Apple, I want to do something to it. The menu that changes and edits or affects that thing all comes forward. On an Android device or Microsoft device, when I touch that thing I want to edit, a menu comes up in which I need to check a folder, in which I might need to check another one or two folders. That series of steps wipes out many of the people we support, and becoming completely independent for using these tools. So we focused on Apple. Android is changing, you know, they're becoming more alike than they used to, and maybe in 10, 15 years, they will both have, you know, more accessible platforms. But in the meantime, we made these silly films using Apple and then went to do it on Androids, and here's what we found. Like I said, I've worked with 2 statewide projects and 2 very large agencies with people who are Android savvy, trying to come up with, okay, how can we do this how could we teach a silly film on an Android? And we narrowed it down to 2 apps, one that's called Funny Mirror, and it's one you can stretch your face and all of that. And then a basic film projector, I'm hitting a dead brain cell, but I'll remember it momentarily. But there's a filmmaking app as well for Androids. Both of them require those multiple steps to get to something. So I'll give you a solid example or a lack of visual understanding. So for example, in the film app, and it's the simplest free one that we could find, you have to look at the timeline to edit how long or short you want something, as opposed to here's a picture, here's some voice underneath it, and I'm just going to make them match because I'm using colored bars to line them up. So I have to actually choose to put in 1 minute to 2 seconds that aligns with the other box. So it's much more complicated to try to complete those steps. Also, both the free apps on the Play Store we find tend to have a lot of in-app purchases. So even the best apps that we found have a lot of pop-up interruption as soon as you use a feature, or even to get to using a feature, that make it, again, just out of the realm of ease. You have to already know how to navigate those things, and we're using these tools to teach people how to use these devices. So that's where the discourse, we've been working on it. We've made a couple of how-tos around, it just keeps falling apart with the complication of the structure of the apps. It's not that it can't be done, but we're building tools that are inclusive to everyone, right? All means all. I don't want to build tools just for a user who can read and write and understand how to program numbers. It's really important for us that at a glance, anybody could do it. And that's our session focus today.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Mm-hmm. So, sorry, one last note. So we're moving into things like we use on an Apple as well. Any note-taking app where you can take a photo and draw. That's another great feature for onboarding with new people to evaluate their capacity. It's just not as long or sophisticated a lesson as silly film, where you get a much better sense of somebody's learning curve. And it also gives you the capacity, which Andrew's really going to emphasize today, to build the tool that the person can now use to reference. If they forget a step or if they want to practice it again, it's essentially a visual reference tool. So that's how these lesson plans are built. So it's possible to do that for Androids. We just haven't found the best onboarding place for that yet. So if our Android users have some ideas at the end of our session today, we can brainstorm some about that. Okay. All right. How'd you do, Megan? Did we set that breakout room up?
I believe so. So what you might want to just repeat, Jennifer, in case anyone missed it at the very beginning, kind of who should go to the breakout room versus who should stay in the main room. But there should be a little pod that popped up on the screen, and there's a button that says join with the breakout room name next to it. So folks should be able to navigate to the breakout room if they need to. But if you want to just give a quick recap of what you'll do in the breakout room versus who should stay in the main room, I think that would be great.
Gotcha. And just to note that if something didn't pop up, don't worry. It's in the same selection of menu items on the bottom of your Zoom, or on the top if you're on a device, where you look at breakout rooms to choose. And as soon as you click that, it will open a breakout. It says breakout room and it has the join button there. So this breakout room is for, we got a lot of feedback when people were setting goals around what they're trying to do in their state or their county or their organization. That's more the top down instead of the bottom up version of implementing technology tools. And by top down and bottom up, I mean the bottom up is the direct service provider and the individual who are using the tools, and the top down is the administration, the state agencies, the county agencies, the auditors, the organizations that are mandating and setting specific guidelines around the use of technology and the implement of technology. That group gave us a lot of feedback after our first meeting about what their goals were. And it was not to get their hands on devices. That is what the rest of these classes are going to be about. It's called Bring Your Device because we wanted people to have hands-on capacity to play around with some tools. But we wanted to have a breakout room to address it, just so we could have some conversation and share some resources. So I'm going to head over to that breakout room. Come on over if you want to have that conversation. If no one comes, I'll be back soon.
All right, let's can give it a minute or two to afford folks the opportunity. And if for some reason you do need just technical support to join the breakout room, don't hesitate to come off of mute. And we'll give folks just a minute to be able to join that breakout room. Okay, so the intent of our conversation today is, as Jennifer just shared, how is it that we can use tools and use technology that's available to us to actually use that as a springboard to support individuals to utilize technology in a variety of ways. And one thing that Jennifer, I believe, shared last time, but that really is sort of a strong emphasis for today, is really recognizing the sort of human experience that is learning new technology, which, for a good number of individuals often comes with some frustration, often comes with maybe even some intimidation. And so recognizing, not just what people need to learn or may want to learn when learning a new piece of tech, but acknowledging how people feel when they're learning new technology becomes really, really important. And so the silly film lessons that we're going to cover today attempt to do a few different things, but first and foremost, it is intended to be fun. It is intended to be enjoyable. It is intended to be just that, silly. And so you will see a lot of opportunities to be just that. You're going to see a lot of me making very silly faces and things like photo booth. And so the hallmark of having fun and this being sort of joyful and sort of a happy experience is really, really intentional, and something that we encourage when supporting individuals to learn new technology. And again, there's a great deal of research that demonstrates the volume of time that it takes someone to learn a new skill, and when that same person is having the opportunity to learn that skill in a way that they find fun and engaging and enjoyable, and that it reduces quite significantly the amount of time and the number of efforts or tries in which someone is able to gain that new skill. I'm going to be referring to some lessons that are available online. And so I did want to at least quickly share with you all, and I'll go to that screen. Jennifer has a lot of these resources on her website, and so I'll also put a link to that in the chat real quick as well. And I want to point out two different key resources that we'll be talking about today. One is from the home screen. If you go and hover over where it says free and you select teaching iPads, below are all of the lessons, you'll see lessons 1 through 5. All of these are the Silly Movie lessons. And so these are free, accessible, online, free to utilize, and you can download those. The other thing that there's a bunch of different resources on Jennifer's website, but another key resource that is helpful as well is also under the free section under Tools for Virtual Delivery. There's a bunch of different resources, but I also want to highlight the content focus. I apologize, not the content focus, the template for virtual delivery, because you'll notice in our slides that there is really intentionality behind pretty much every choice that exists within the slides, from things like having a background color that is not necessarily the sort of typical, let's say, black and white, in which increases eye strain. We know that it increases eye strain, but also can create additional glare. We try to be intentional about things like font choices and readability. And so we actually work with, sorry, I'm realizing if there are things put in the chat, please don't hesitate. If there's someone could just be also monitoring the chat and just letting me know if there's anything that I need to be responsive to. I sometimes struggle to do both.
Yeah, Andrew, I can keep an eye on the chat for you too.
Thank you. I really
And then, mhm.
And so we actually, Jennifer and I were actually recently in the last few months updating the Silly Movie lessons, and it was really helpful for us to share those tools. And it's just a part of Jennifer's practice of sharing those tools and having individual users give us the input and feedback about what parts of the lessons were working, but what parts of the lessons weren't necessarily working as well. And so even placement of text versus images, all of those things are intentional and are intended to help facilitate how it is that you can best share this information with someone. So really do encourage you to take a look at the building accessible lessons in Keynote or PowerPoint. And again, the lessons that we are going to be reviewing today are all available on Jennifer's website. So with that, we're going to dive right into a lesson. So let me bring up lesson 1. And actually what I'm going to do is just so that you can see an example of the silly film. And actually, that's the other thing, that the silly film lessons that we have that are online, because they're PDF, don't have the embedded videos. However, if you are interested in getting access to these that have the videos, that we can also show you those examples, so that you're consistently having the model at the start. So you're modeling exactly what it is that the person is going to then be working on. So let me just bring right back up. And there are 2 examples on Jennifer's website as well.
This is my son. Can I be a sunbeam? So many mouths to feed. Look, I made a new friend. Her name is Ellie. This is my son. Can I be a sunbeam? So many mouths to feed.
So right from the start, you can see that, when you're sharing this, when you're sharing the model with someone, it already starts to give a little bit of a oh, this is going to maybe look or feel different than maybe how I've learned a piece of technology in the past. um, and we find that that helps to sort of begin to respond to some barriers that we all sort of begin to put up for ourselves as we're approaching a new piece of technology. And so how, maybe by in the chat or show of hands, how many folks actually have an iPad that they have with them today where they can be following along? And I ask in part to just sort of appreciate how many folks maybe can be doing this as as I'm going through this versus how many folks are going to just be sort of watching along. So I see Lena, I see Joe has put up her hand or their hand. So we've got at least, ooh, okay, Alice. All right, so we've got a few folks who can be doing this alongside. And so I would encourage you, again, sort of the intent of our class is actually for you to be able to, have that device in hand and being able to follow along. And as we go, if there are questions or things that you want me to pause and share more about, don't hesitate. But otherwise, we're going to start to dive into a silly film. So the first thing that we do is ask people to hold the iPad sort of the long way or landscape. And you'll notice that we try to also be intentional about word choice where there's maybe technical jargon like landscape, but also finding word choices, but then always having the visual model. And so the other thing I'm going to be sort of talking at the same time that I share sort of what the slide itself is asking us to do is to share a little bit more about the intentionality behind the choices behind each slide, because what we can envision you doing as well is, well, this is the sort of a how-to for creating a silly film. Likewise, there's opportunities to create all sorts of how-to documents that follow a similar model and that sort of incorporate that same sort of intentionality. Um, and that you can actually create how-to documents for any number of things, any number of apps, or any number of things that someone may want to do using one of their devices. And so we're kind of sort of be operating in both spaces of this is how you make a silly film, and here are some really key or important things to think about when you're creating a how-to. And again, some of that is covered in the virtual content presentation that I shared, and some of that I'll share along the way. Another thing that's really important is really showing visually exactly what the person themselves is going to be seeing with the device in hand. And so again, even deciding to show, okay, and even though the hands are a little blurry, but even showing this is what it's going to look like when you're holding the device. And here's maybe about where your hands are going to be. And so we try to be thoughtful and intentional about even physical hand placement or where you're going to touch something on a screen so that it's really a realistic preview for what someone is going to actually have right in front of them. So then depending on the iPad model that you have, you are either going to go from that home screen and you're going to swipe up in order to get to the home screen, from the lock screen to the home screen. Or if you have an older model in which there's the home button, you can press the home button to get to the home screen. And again, you'll notice that there is some intentionality behind both the placement of the yellow boxes. One thing that I'll point out is all of these images actually have shadows to them. So when you're creating the presentation in Keynote or PowerPoint, you can actually manipulate the images so that the images have that little bit of shadow around them. What we find is that actually, and we do that with all of our images. And why we do that is because it does create more contrast. And so it does afford the viewer to be able to see what it is that we are drawing their attention to. With greater clarity than if you kept the images, for lack of a better way of putting it, sort of flat without the shadow. The other thing is that we do try to show a sort of a range of hands, and really, again, sort of showing where you would be actually touching on the screen itself, so that someone can truly follow along, just as if there was someone right next to them showing them step by step. So from going from the home screen, we're going to ask that you select photo booth. And so we pull out specifically what the icon is, but then also show the icon in context of what maybe an Apple or an iPad home screen is going to look like. And so likewise, on your device, you'll find where your photo booth app is and open up the photo booth app. Look, 9 choices. And so again, the intent here is that what individuals see on the device in front of them, they are then able to see in the Silly Film lessons themselves. And so they will then be able to see all of these really silly choices. And the other thing that Jennifer shared at the start is you'll notice fairly early on, we're already starting to work through the skills that are needed to navigate a iPad. And so you'll notice at that very first, among the first slides, is that swiping, the actual process of swiping from the bottom to the top, because that's actually a skill that you build and using technology, is when to swipe, when to tap, when to tap and hold. And so all of these lessons actually will take someone through all the different kinds of taps, swipes, taps, and holds that are typically used when using a piece of technology like a smart screen. So you will you have these 9 choices, and then you pick one. So pick whichever choice of those 9 you would like. And then upon selecting one, you can touch the white circle to take a picture. And so if you're following along, I'll ask you to take a picture yourself. And you can sort of quickly see where this starts to become really sort of silly and really fun, because as you'll can sort of see towards the bottom of my screen, I've been taking a lot of different silly pictures, and there's just a lot of room to do just that, be really, really silly, and I actually truly encourage there to just be sort of a lightness to and when you sort of begin to see your face manipulated in all these sort of very silly ways, you can't help but start to not take things as seriously, which is I find to be really helpful, again, when learning a new piece of technology. And so you'll see again in this slide how we both show exactly what the person would be seeing themselves in their iPad, on their iPad, but then we also pull out what specifically we are looking for the person to focus in on. And so in this instance, it's touching the white circle to take a picture. So you have it in the context of the iPad screen, what people have visually in front of them, but then you can also pull out and highlight what specifically you're looking, and then you make that connection. That's the function of that yellow arrow, is to take the image to bring greater focus to it, but then also demonstrate where in context it is on the screen that's in front of them. It's also intentional that the finger is actually a little bit below where the person is actually going to touch. So if you were, let's say, creating one of these on your own, while it's almost, you almost want to show them exactly, you would touch right and you would put it right on top. By showing it slightly below, it keeps the view that the person has and doesn't block specifically what you're asking the person to touch. Also, we have found that this is sort of in the weeds, but I think important, the use of the yellow highlighted box. We have found that if you bring that box in too tight, too close to what it is that the person is focused on, that in some ways actually sort of removes the person from being able to see it within the context of what's immediately around it. And so it is intentional that the boxes are a little bit bigger than just the where the person is going to touch, but again, providing sort of a little bit of that context around what they're touching so that when they themselves are going to do it, they are able to visually see, yes, what I'm touching, but also what should be happening around what I'm touching. So you would touch the white circle to take a picture. And then that is going to actually drop the picture below. And so you can see all the pictures you take then drop underneath your photo. And so depending on the device that someone has, if it's a brand new device and they are using it themselves for the first time, then their picture will be the first picture that goes under a photo booth. But we also recognize that for some individuals, they may be receiving a device that has been previously used. And so then it's sometimes important or helpful to show, oh, okay, so you may have a version which there's, one photo that you just took that dropped down, but maybe you're working on a device in which someone has already taken a lot of photos in photo booth. And so being able to show someone, you may see it like this, or depending on the device that you have, you may see it like this. So being able to visually represent what it is that someone sees and the variation. So similar to the start where we said, you may be swiping up or you may be pressing the home button. Likewise, depending on the person's device, they may be seeing a bunch of photos or they may just be seeing that first photo that they themselves just took. And again, this was actually feedback that we were given from someone who was going through the Silly Film lessons because they had a bunch of photos that someone else had already took and they were getting a little tripped up on, well, wait, why was it just showing the one when this one has all of these other photos? So we made sure to then visually represent both. From there, you'll touch the 3-circle symbol to go back to the 9 choices. One of the fun things about the Silly Film lessons as well, or even any of these how-to documents, is as Apple continues to do new and cool things, you actually then get to integrate, new or different features into the lesson. And so one thing that Apple actually did in photo booth is now when you choose the light tunnel option of those 9 choices, you actually can move the location and even change the size of the light tunnel. And so adding in some of those sort of cool features is also an opportunity to kind of show not just what someone can do with one tool, but actually how they can even take a particular thing like the light tunnel and begin to manipulate things like where the focus is, or how much is being focused. You can focus here, or you can go even broader and focus even more. So again, sharing with folks, okay, depending on what you choose, you can also do different things. And so you'll take a second picture. And then you'll go back by touching the 3 circles again. And then you can take a third picture. And so the goal is that you'll have 3 pictures that you've taken using 3 different photo booth silly choices. For some individuals, you may find that once you have gone through the process once, they are then able to go back by following this slide. For others, however, it's actually then really helpful to go back to slide 6 and walk through the process again, and using the slides that have more of that focus to be able to walk them through taking their second and their third picture. So once you've taken your third picture, and if I do need to slow down for anybody, please don't hesitate to share either in the chat or come off mute if I'm going too quickly. But after you've completed taking your third picture in photo booth, you'll either swipe up from the bottom, or you'll press home, but you'll go to your home screen. And as we share, we're back on the home page. Why? Because we're going to be making a movie with the pictures that you just took. Oh, thank you, Lena. So next we're going to open iMovie. And another sort of, just intentionality point that I want to share as well is we also try to be somewhat thoughtful around the size of the finger. And so you'll notice on the iMovie where the finger is placed underneath the iMovie, if you actually put your finger below your iMovie on your iPad, by the way, as you've seen, I have mine as well. So if you see me looking down, it's because I'm looking along as well. You'll notice that a finger is going to take up, the width of your finger is going to take up about the width of the app itself. And so again, as we think about how we make this really concrete and visually consistent for the person, we're even intentional about the width of the hand or the finger. And so again, that the person, as they are following along, are seeing about as visually consistent with what they themselves are seeing right in front of them on the device itself. And again, it's intentional that we're looking at what are the tools that are coming preloaded, are already on the device itself, so that there isn't necessarily the need to be downloading or learning to download new or different apps, but really working with what is already integrated into the device itself. So you're going to open up iMovie. And I will also share this about creating how-tos. It's then really helpful to just be mindful that over time, as updates are made, you'll want to go back to your how-to documents and actually have the opportunity to sort of test and say, okay, have there been any new or different changes that have been made? Do I need to update? And so periodically, the Silly Film lesson will get updated because with one of the more recent iOS updates, some of the features to iMovie changed. So you get to sort of enjoy the fun again. So you're first going to select Start New Project, and then you're going to select Choose Movie. So that's the third option all the way on your right. One thing that sometimes we also do find, though, just something to be mindful of, is if a device has not been updated, it may mean that they're running off of a older version of an app. And so it is at times helpful if someone is seeing, let's say, something different, to see if the app itself does need to be updated. So once you've selected movie, that's going to open up and you're going to see the photos that you recently took in Photo Booth. And you're going to tap each one of those pictures and you'll see blue check marks next to each one of those pictures. After you've selected your three Photo Booth images, you'll then touch Create Movie, which is at the bottom of your screen. Okay. So those images are going to drop down and you're going to see a thin white playback bar. And so we're going to actually slide your work table all the way to the right so that the playback bar is at the beginning of your film. So let me also just show, let's see. So you'll see at least here that what that looks like is you're going to take your finger and you can slide so that it's all the way at the start. Now you can touch the play arrow and you will see that you have already made your first film in iMovie. And we're just beginning. And that's also, I think, part of the fun of the silly film lessons as well, is not only is there sort of fun moments in between, right? Getting to take the photo booth pictures. There's also really tangible outcomes along the way. And so you are able to see sort of the progress that you're making as you continue to build and as you continue to learn. And so being able to fairly simply make a film and say, I have a film, very quickly, we're about only 18 slides in, is again, I think really reinforcing to then kind of keep going, keep moving forward. From there, you can select done on the top left-hand side. And iMovie auto sets your title to My Movie. And then if you created another one, it would then auto name it My Movie 2, and it will just keep going. So you can actually name your film so you can find it more easily, but also so that you can sort of personalize it. And so what you will do is you will touch where it says My Movie, and that will highlight the text. You can touch the X, or if you prefer, you can also select delete on the keyboard. And that will remove the My Movie. Then you're going to type a new movie title. We recommend your name and then the word silly. Once you've typed in your name and silly, then you press done. And your film has a name. To replay your movie, you can press the center play arrow, or you can also select the lower play arrow, and that actually lets you watch your movie in full screen. And believe it or not, that's lesson one. So what we find is that depending on how much time you have with a person, but also just where you're sort of meeting that person at, where they're at, how much that they're wanting to take in, how much they're wanting to engage. This also affords sort of natural breaking moments where someone has, again, achieved something, has accomplished something, has demonstrated some progress, has hopefully had some fun along the way, but also some natural breaking points too. And so well, as I dive into lesson 2, you'll see where you can sort of pick up right where you left off. But again, just being mindful that different people will be in different places. And so let me bring up lesson 2. Does anyone have any questions, though, on anything that I've shared so far from lesson 1? All right. So let me bring up lesson 2. And so you'll see there's a prompt right at the beginning of the lesson that if you just finished lesson 1, you can start right on slide 6. So you can jump right into slide 6. Here we're going to begin to talk about the different sections of iMovie, because there's 3 primary sort of spaces within iMovie that you'll be working in. The first is the playback screen. And that starts from where you place your playback bar. So the bar itself stays still, but then, as I showed earlier, you sliding your finger right or left on the work table will actually change what you see on the playback screen itself. It will follow based on where the playback bar is. So you can even, try that if you want, to be able to see how it is that the playback screen is going to sort of move depending on where your playback bar is. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Andrew. Just so you know, the 3 of us popped back in. I don't know where you are, but we do want to take a minute to show folks that they can get this information on the website too, so I can pull that
Absolutely.
up.
So we actually just got into lesson 2, and we're able to share both the process, but a lot of the intentionality behind the different decisions that are made when creating the silly film lesson.
Perfect. Do you mind if I pop in and do the website piece? Is this a
Yeah,
good time?
please do.
Okay. I'm sorry to miss the fun, you guys. This is my favorite stuff to do, is these silly films. So thank you, Andrew. And Andrew got so good at it, as you could see, I had him redo our lessons. So you saw a lot of his face there. All right, so just so you know, on our website, which is www.ableops.com, and it's on all of the material that you got. So on the very right-hand side, there's a little free button. Under the free button, you can, the first menu item there is teaching iPads. And if you open that teaching iPads, it's going to take you to a page that gives you a bunch of different information. There's a justification letter if you're having trouble getting a piece of equipment paid for. So it gives you some information about how to, something you submit to Medicaid or your insurance company. And then the iPad setup, which Andrew just updated to the 2024 version. I just have to put it on the website, so that will be forthcoming. But it's literally a step-by-step guide built with the same features that he was just showing you in the silly film lessons, where you've got it's not black on white, so there isn't glare. We're mindful of all of the accessibility features. And then there's also an ideas for how to get started. So you can download that, and it gives you a bunch of links and different things to do. And then we move into the silly films. There's Andrew's silly film. Here's my old one. It's still up there because I'm a fluent signer, and there's an example for some deaf folks in there. And then the lessons are right on the webpage. So you can open them up, the ones that you were just in lesson 2, say for example, and you can download it from the website. So you can keep these lesson plans, and you can be working with your students or adults specifically about how to do the step-by-step. You can print them out so people can reference them that way. And because we're online, I think it's just going to take up too much capacity to actually get online with the lesson. So in any case, they're the lessons that you were just looking at with Andrew. Lesson 1 through 4 is how to make the silly film with the apps he showed you on the iPad today. Lesson 5 is how we make a bio page. So if you looked at my film, you'll see a bio page where you make up something crazy and import a picture of yourself and, you know, draw on yourself and then make up a crazy bio, like you know, to put on the end as a filmmaker. So it just teaches some creativity and gives a little more license for, you know, more play on the device. So just to note that all of it is available there. You're welcome to go and download anything that you find helpful. All right, Andrew, I wanted to make sure to get that piece in. Come on back.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mhm. Are you at a stopping place? Are you, let's see, on time, I guess we're about just 10 minutes before.
Yeah, I think what may be great. I'm genuinely curious in terms of folks' sort of initial thoughts or experience having sort of seen both lesson 1, but also again just hearing a little bit about the intentionality behind the different choices. From things like being really mindful about the placement of the finger, right, and also even the width, so that it's more of a realistic preview of what the person themselves is seeing. Sort of curious what folks' initial thoughts or reactions are.
And Megan saying we have this scheduled for another half an hour. Yes, we're aware of that. And we stay on that extra half an hour. Every session is literally a Q&A. What do you want to learn more about? And maybe everyone will want to stay and keep doing the silly films, and that'd be just grand. But for anybody who is going to leave at the hour, we just wanted to do a little Q&A before you left. Thanks for
Great.
making sure
Yeah,
we
no
got.
problem. I just didn't want you to feel like you needed to rush. Sounds good.
Thank you.
We should probably remind everyone every session of that. So Andrew, you want to ask your question again?
Yeah, so really curious. You've now had the opportunity to walk through lesson 1, and both see the silly film lesson itself, the silly movie lesson itself, but also again, we talked a lot about the intentionality behind the choices that are made in those, so that as you may start to think about how it is that you could be creating how-tos, things that you may want to stay mindful of. So I'm seeing Joe share in the chat. Love the details that you put into the instructions. Thank you. Elliot sharing, I really appreciated the feedback in designing lessons. Most of our consumers use Android, so we'd have to make our own tutorials.
And Elliot, we're working on them as well. So keep in touch with us, because we now are Android. We own Android devices, and it was just the frustration on the silly film being the onboarding point that stopped us from using it today. But we are making tools like how to, the basic setup and all of those types of things. So we'd love to pass anything along or have more conversations if you want. Awesome. And Joe said same here. Yeah, we understand there are more Android users in this group than there are Apple users, which is usually the opposite. So we're working on it, and we'll be developing some things for you by the end. Josh too, same boat. All the Android users in the group. But again, this is the teach the man to fish story, right? We can catch a fish and give it to you, but the idea of what we call in our company, wax on, wax off, right? From the old Karate Kid movies, where you have to develop the muscles, you have to develop the know-how to continue to develop accessible training tools. Lisa was in my in the breakout group. Lisa, I'm just going to brag about you for a minute. Lisa pulled together a group of people with vision loss, and they're looking at technology and how they're using technology. And Lisa herself has done some brilliant things about, okay, I created this using AI, but now I'm going to have a different app, read it back, describe it to me to make sure that it did the right job. So I have a visual to go with my lesson, just brilliant. And we are in dire need of the connective tissue about how to build the training tools that allow other people to access these good ideas. So the intention of this lesson is not, here's the tool to teach people, it's here's what we've learned. We've learned that we have to build tools that are accessible, those thoughtful features that Andrew talked about, all the intentional, like, here's why we did it this way, so that you can continue to build things. Because as we know, right, technology is going to keep changing. And the other thing that we know is AI at some point is going to be able to build it for me, but I need to be able to tell it exactly what I need in order for that to be successful. Now, like Andrew, as you heard him talking in the lesson, we have the language to tell AI what to do to develop these tools. It's not 100% there yet, but it's going to be. And we're gonna keep putting information into chatbots until it starts to gain the language and the skill set to do it. But if you're going to be somebody who's teaching anyone, whether you're statewide, you're a state, someone trying to set state protocol, or county protocol, or agency protocol, this is a consideration that has to be put into place, because right now we're still developing everything for readers and writers. And that wipes out quite a large population of people that we serve. All right, Elise says, I think this will be a great program for teaching people how to tap or slide. Great starting point. And actually, iMovie teaches you how to touch the device in every other way you need to touch it for every other app on the market. It's also one of the reasons we start with it. Anybody else have comments or thoughts or needs? Does anybody want to stay to continue going through the lessons so you could actually complete a film? If you are an Apple user, which is going to be very few people in this group.
Well, certainly let us know, or certainly feel free to stay on. Jennifer and I will still be here. And if you'd like, we can continue to go through the silly film lessons together. And as Jennifer shared, they are available and accessible online. And so if you want to do it yourself, feel free to share them with Jennifer and I. If you decide to complete one, we would love to see what you're able to put together.
And if you are done, you are free to go. And if you want to stay, you're free to stay, and you'll just have to guide us with what you'd like to focus on.
Also, as a reminder, we are recording today, and we record each of the sessions, so we'll be sharing the link to that video on YouTube after each of the sessions too, if anybody has to drop off and we end up staying on and there's something that you feel like you might have missed.
And a reminder for everybody who's still in the room, our next session is on apps. So we're gonna do some creative, but some sharing with each other about the cool stuff that we know. And we're gonna, we'll start with the apps that we know and love and use regularly at Able Opportunities, and things that we see really working for individuals. So Lisa, we'll be tapping Lisa for that too. All right, Zara and Lena, Becky and Joe. Are there particular things you wanted to focus on? Did you want to finish the silly film?
Hi, this is Lena. I know I'm one of the AT really beginners, so I mean, I'd be happy to see more of the lesson, but if there's other things that other folks want to do, they might have more familiarity than I do anyway, so that's okay.
People who speak up, people who vote win. So Lena, thanks for saying something, because we will certainly do some more of the slides. Is there anybody else who wants additional information, or we're just gonna head on forward with the slides? Oh, Joe, good. Joe said fairly new to iPad, so thank you. Okay, that's the direction we're going in. I'm going to mute myself, Andrew, so you can just teach.
Excellent. All right. Okay, so we will start where we just left off. So again, we were looking at the different sections of iMovie, and we just talked about the playback screen. And then section 2, actually, let me just kind of reorient ourselves, and me too. So we've got our 3 sections: the playback screen, the media section, and the work table. And so we talked about in the playback screen that you can swipe the playback bar, and that will actually show on the playback screen exactly where you're at with the playback bar. So section 2 is the media section. And what we show is that you can touch X to close, and you can touch the plus to open the media section. And there will be times where you'll want the media section to open, and you'll see that as we continue through the lesson. And there will be times where you may want to have it closed so that you can use as much of the screen for the playback section and the work table as well. So we're going to ask that you press the plus so that it is open. And there are 2 folders that the media section has. One is audio, where you can import sound effects and music stored on the iPad. The other is the media section, in which you can add additional photos or videos to your movie. And so as you're creating film, and if you're looking to do anything that is either audio based or additional pictures or videos, those are all going to exist right within iMovie, right in your media section. For the moment, we're going to ask you to touch X to close the media section until we need to use it again. And again, you'll notice there's sort of intentionality behind, okay, we're going to not just have an instructor or someone say, okay, you're going to close this, or that, let's say in the next slide, you'll notice that the view has changed. And so the the media section is gone. There are no sort of assumptions built into this. This really should take someone literally step by step through the process, and it will always visually then align with what it is that the person just did. So you're going to close out the media section, and then again, when we go to look at the work table, this is the view that the person themselves has. So the work table is where you're going to be spending a lot of time to edit anything that is contained in the film. And to edit anything, you're going to tap that item in the work table. And so in this instance, you can see if you select, and I'm going to ask you, if you tap one of your photos in the work table, it actually brings a little yellow highlight around the picture itself. That means that it's ready to edit. And so if you want to know that you've selected the right picture, or the picture that you that you wanted to select, you'll see that yellow highlight go all the way around. The undo button may be one of your best friends. And so knowing that if you make a mistake, it's really okay. Or even if you just try, you're going to have the opportunity to try all sorts of features. And if you just don't like, let's say, a filter that you put, or maybe a sound effect that you add later, you don't have to worry. You don't have to figure out, okay, how do I delete this? You can actually touch you can touch the undo button, and it will take away whatever edit you just made. So one of the next things that we're going to do is we're going to actually change the order of the pictures. So when you selected your 3 pictures, you notice that they sort of just dropped down right into iMovie. But you actually don't have to stick with that order. You can actually put the pictures in whatever order that you want them to be in. You've got some control and choice to decide which picture you want first. And so what I want you to do is I want you to touch and hold your finger on one of the pictures. You notice that when you touch and you hold, that the picture itself sort of jumps. Don't let go of it. You can keep pressing and keep holding on. And then while pressing, you can actually drag it to the left or to the right to move the picture. And if you want to change where your other pictures are, you can change all of your pictures and where they are, if you want to play around with where you want each picture to go. And again, you'll notice that there was intentionality, and as Jennifer referenced earlier, so at this point, we've now demonstrated, let's see, we're only on slide 14 of lesson 2. We've now demonstrated tapping, tapping and holding. We've discussed how to use something to bring something zoom in or out. We've also we've also tried the holding and then dragging something. And so as Jennifer shared, there's a lot of opportunities very early on to both try the different kinds of touching that you'll do on any other app or any other element of the iPad, and that also being a really great opportunity to also see where someone is needing to strengthen a particular skill on the iPad. And Jennifer, as I was sharing this earlier, I thought that this may actually be a really great moment to sort of remind folks about hand under hand versus hand over hand. I was wondering if you might be able to share a little bit about that in context of the iPad Silly Films and supporting folks to sort of come forward.
You bet. So one of the things that I learned late in my career, sadly, was how important it is not to put my hand on top of someone else's. In our original meeting together, I showed you that picture of homunculus that was drawn by an OT. It shows the sensitivity of the body, where you're getting the most information. Your hands, your feet, and your mouth are the 3 places where you have more communication to your nervous system about what it's exposed to. So what that means is, in our world of my hand-eye coordination, I'm going to, and what happens most of the time when I'm teaching somebody is I put my hand on top of theirs and try to teach them how to touch something. And what that does is ignites their startle reflex. Even if they're not jumping or start looking startled, internally they're processing, what is it? What do you want from me? What are you trying to show me? As opposed to hand underhand, which is I have the thing. I'm in Hawaii right now, you guys. This is my SPF that I'm using as a model. My sunscreen, not SPF, sunscreen. And I'm using my hand. So it's my hand, and I tap the person and put my hand under theirs and model and teach them to explore what it is that I'm doing. And then when they come forward starting to explore, I can back off. It means that I'm actually teaching them, I'm acting out the steps and the movements to do the thing. So if I'm touching an iPad, it's I have to tap it this way, I slide it this way. And instead of putting your hand on top of theirs to touch it, their muscle memory, if their hand is on top of theirs, will understand what to do and move at its own pace when they start to understand something. It's when what we call intrinsic motivation for mastery kicks in. All it means is, oh, I know what to do here. I get this now, so that we can back out of the way. Also to note that the other thing that we do with folks around touching the device when they're really chaotic, they're kind of slapping the screen or trying to figure out how to touch it, is we will ask for their palm. And I will talk them through if they can process this. It's a tap or a double tap, or let's say tap. Tapping is typically the one that most people struggle with. Is they're putting their finger on the screen and it's sliding around a little bit, and that's telling the iPad go here, go there, go, and it stops it from working. So when you tap, it really needs to be specific. And when you give feedback on somebody's palm, that often works also in addition to this hand under hand methodology.
Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I think it's a really important point because there is, in my experience, has been that, in many instances, I've seen a lot of professionals' first instinct is to do that hand over hand when demonstrating these different taps. Particularly what made me also think of it again was that touch and hold, because that may not happen on your very first shot and someone's very first attempt. That may take them more than one attempt, and so we've seen where a professional's first instinct may be to then put their hand over the person's hand to sort of manipulate the person's hand to show them, oh, and pressing down on that person's finger onto the iPad to show. And again, the importance of not engaging in that, but rather that hand under hand or testing or practicing on the palm. Okay, so the photos are in the order that you want them to be in. You're going to you're going to touch one of the photos and you're going to see the yellow highlight appear. We can actually change how long a picture is going to be part of a movie. And we can actually slide using the thick yellow edge. We can drag it in or drag it out on the screen to make the photo longer. So it means that it will play longer in the film, or to make it shorter so that it's playing shorter in the film. So you can go and take each photo and make it as long as you want or as short as you want. Now we're going to add some fun filters. And again, I shared this with you earlier, but want to reinforce. You'll notice that in this section where we say add fun filters, you're getting a visual in terms of where it is that you're going to end up. What is the outcome of what it is you're about to do, so that you're previewing for the person what it is that they're about to do in this section of the lesson. And so you'll see in this instance, if we're going to add fun filters, you're going to start at the end, where it is that you're going. And an example that Jennifer used a while ago that I really appreciate is, who likes going on a trip and you're, let's say, driving the car and there's a passenger and you're reliant on the passenger for instructions to get to where it is that you're going. Do you want the person to say, here's where we're going to, and then provide the instructions? Or would you prefer that the person just says, okay, go to the end of the driveway. Okay, take a right. Okay, at the stop sign, you're going to take a left, never once knowing where your end destination actually is? A lot of us intuitively want to know where it is that we're going in order to help us make sense of the steps along the way. And so again, it's intentional that when we start in a new section, like adding the fun filters, we show the person where it is that we are going to end up before we then go into the individual steps that get us there. So always, you're going to first touch one of the photos and see that yellow highlight. And that's to do any kind of editing. You're always going to tap the thing that you want to edit first. And you'll see that an edit menu bar appears right at the bottom below the picture. you have a few different choices for in this edit option that are white. Then there are also features that are sort of grayed out or a little bit darker. Those are actually specifically for film. And so when we go to the film lessons, you'll actually have the opportunity to make those types of edits as well. In order to add a color filter, you're going to touch the symbol with the 3 circles. So the filter's choice right at the bottom. And you'll see that there are a lot of different choices that you can make. And that's also another, I think, fun thing about the silly film lesson is that someone can really exercise a lot of control and a lot of choice over what it is that they're creating, which again is often motivating for individuals. So you're going to touch one of the filters that you like, and you'll notice that when you do that, the picture itself will add the filter, or the filter will be added to the picture. Next, you're going to touch the action symbol, the symbol with the scissors on it, to get back to your menu. Now we're going to talk about the Ken Burns effect. Is anyone familiar with the documentarian Ken Burns? He uses a lot of historic images in his documentaries. And in order to keep people engaged, instead of just showing a picture, a historic picture that remains, let's just say, on the screen, he actually has this effect, right, where he moves the image or the what the person is seeing on the screen actually moves, and it keeps you engaged, but it also allows you to, if you want to also focus in on something. And so the iMovie allows you to pick points where you actually start the picture and where it ends up at the end of the clip as well. So first, as always, you'll select a photo itself. So you touch the clip, it highlights yellow, and you'll see that there are 3 choices on the playback screen. Pinch to position the start, the following arrow, and then Ken Burns enabled. And we'll go through what each one of those do, but that's what you will see. We're going to start by touching the pinch to position the start and the arrow sort of facing to the left. And you can then actually take on the playback screen, you can zoom in or zoom out and select where it is that you want the picture to start when you're playing the movie. So when you're playing this particular picture in your movie, you can decide where it is that you want the picture to start from. Once you selected that, then you touch right below the arrow, right below the pinch to position the start, and then you can select the pinch to position the end, or the arrow that's facing to the right. That's actually going to let you decide where the picture ends. So the last thing that someone is going to see from that picture before it goes to the next clip. And so again, you can zoom in or zoom out and decide where it is that you want the picture to end. And again, you can do these for each one of your photos, or you can choose to do it for just one for now, but you can test it out on each one of your photos. And you can have, by the way, a lot of fun doing things. Just, I'll be honest, when I did my first silly film, you can have a lot of fun by like having it start, let's say, on your chin, but then it zooming out and it ends, let's say, in your nostril or in your, on your ear. So you can actually, again, sort of bring forward all the silliness in where you choose to start a picture and where you choose to end a picture. You also have the choice to turn Ken Burns on or off. And so when you touch Ken Burns enabled, if you touch it again, it will turn it off and will say Ken Burns disabled. But if you want to turn it back on, again, you'll just touch it again and it will then turn back on, or is what is said enabled. And so if you don't want that picture to sort of move along the screen, then you can turn it off and it will just be the picture itself that you selected for the entirety of the clip. So you're going to slide the work table until the playback bar is at the start of the film. So again, you'll take your finger and you'll slide it right so that that thin white line is right at the start of the film. And you can touch the play arrow and watch your film again and see where your Ken Burns effects took you and see the different filters that you put on your pictures. And that is the end of lesson 2. So you have had the opportunity to explore iPhoto with someone, take those silly pictures, then you had the opportunity to go into iMovie and bring those pictures in from iPhoto and actually almost immediately have a film that was created. Then from there, you were able to start to try those, learn the different sections, and then start to learn the different features, starting with things like the filters and the Ken Burns effect and editing the length to make it longer or shorter. And then we kind of continue to go through all the different types of features. And Jennifer, I'm seeing you back on screen, so wondering, do we want to pause or dive right into lesson 3?
No, I think we have to pause here, but 3, 4, and 5 are on the website and in the materials that you were given. But I did want to note that every lesson was made so that you could actually have a completed film by the end of it. So at the end of lesson 1, you have a completed film. There's no editing to it, but you've got a completed film. So you can play it. And that is true for every single lesson, is that you're ending up with something. The other thing is we were thoughtful about doing one of the more challenging features and then one of the most fun features in the same lesson. So you'll see the filters, big excitement. Filters and sound effects are probably get the most attention. Give yourselves lots of time so people can play around long enough to really decide what they want. But then you'll see they're paired with more challenging things, like at Ken Burns is hard to navigate those little things on the screen and what do I want it to do? It's fun, but it takes more skill. So in every lesson we have that balance as much as we could make that work also. Because our goal here, of course, is to keep in front of the person with enough enjoyment that they're learning. It's the painting the fence in Huck Finn, right? I'm enjoying myself. So I don't mind trying this again and being a little frustrated. I can tolerate that because I'm liking because I want to see myself with a yellow face or whatever it is that whatever feature I'm using. So I just wanted to add that too, because there's only 7 minutes left till the end of the hour. So any specific questions, or there really isn't time to go through another lesson. But if you wanted to talk more about kind of the structures, the templates that we use for building these kinds of materials, any questions or thoughts, or did anybody make a film?
I made one.
Hey, way to go, Lena. How was it?
Interesting. I haven't played around with this on iPad, and Haven't played with photo booth since I guess when my friends got a Mac originally back in early 2000s or whenever that was.
Yes,
So
yes.
it was fun.
Good. Well, keep going because boy, once you get the music on there, you've got a real complete thing. And when we started, I also was talking to Andrew about all the kids in my life, including all my nephews and nieces. I've been making film with them for so long that we have compilations of, I have 11-year-old niece who I have her first film at, 4 years old, us making a silly film. So she's got this beautiful story of learning how to use technology, and they all show her at different ages and her different, creative styles and skill sets and all of that going on too. So it's a nice gift in that way as well.
And Joe shared, yes, thank you so much. Lots of fun. Thank you, Joe.
It's also a good way that we test material. Is anybody, when we start working on and build something, and Andrew can attest to this, right? It's wax on, wax off. We build it and then we look at it, we send it to each other and go, what about this? What about that? But the real tried and true editing comes with when we're working with an individual and using the materials. That feedback is everything. And getting people involved in building the materials, learning how to take screenshots so that they can track, even in a photo album, when you can create an album in photos where you're putting pictures sequentially to remember to learn how to do something. So you can take screenshot by screenshot in order to do that. The challenge with screenshots is, of course, you don't have the finger on it or the highlight to point where you're going, but we use those screenshots, of course, to make these more sophisticated lessons. These more sophisticated, simple lessons. Right. Anybody else? Questions before we finish our time with you today?
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Pam.
Thanks so much for joining us, you all. Really, really fun group to work with. And Andrew, thanks for teaching today. So much fun. One of my favorite lessons. And now the instruction is go home and make silly film, everyone.